Good morning. I sure appreciate the analogy that Travis used, but Dylan, you made me hungry. Oh. We live in a world where we put most of our trust in faith, or faith, I should say, in sight, don't we? We can smell something, we can hear something, we can feel something, we can even taste something. But until we see it, we're not truly convinced, are we? Until we know what it is. As Christians, by sight is not the way we're told to walk. We're told to walk by faith. Not blind faith, mind you. God never told us just to blindly follow Him. He has proven Himself time and time again. He has proven to us that He is going to do what He says, that we can depend on Him. So we don't have blind faith. He's revealed the goal for us, but the road we must travel sometimes is hidden. We don't always know what the path looks like ahead. I mean, we know where we are, we know where we want to be, but what lies in between? We live by faith. We walk by faith. Sometimes it's hard to move from where we are to where we want to be. Because sometimes it's frightening. Remember, a few weeks ago, we said we get in a rut. And remember, the difference between a rut and a grave is the depth. You know, we get into a place where we're comfortable. Today, we see Jesus coming out to His disciples, walking on the water during a storm. And so, as Jesus walks on the water, the disciples are afraid. I mean, think about these men. They're just like us. They have emotions. They have fears. They have doubts. I mean, yeah, they're walking with Jesus daily, but they're still just like us. They see Jesus coming toward them on the water. Look at Matthew 14 and verse 26. It says, when the disciples saw Him walking on the lake, they were terrified. It's a ghost, they said, and cried out in fear. Why? I mean, would it frighten you if you saw somebody walking on the water? Sure it would. Especially during a storm. I mean, they're already, and it always amazes me that, at least 4 of these men were seasoned fishermen, and whenever the storm comes up, they're afraid. They've never been on the lake when a storm before? Sure they have. But here, they see Jesus coming at them, and they're afraid. I mean, but at this particular time, why would they be afraid? Haven't they seen Jesus accomplish amazing things that they'd never seen before up to this point? I mean, they had just witnessed the feeding of the 5,000. So they had to know there's nothing this man can't do. Nothing. But they were still afraid. But as always, Jesus comforts them. That's one thing we can always depend on our Lord and Savior to do, is comfort us. We can depend on Him to wrap His arms around us and help us to feel better. In verse 27, Jesus says to them, "Take courage, it is I, don't be afraid." Well, what does that mean to us? Sometimes we face situations and we think we're alone. We're never alone. Never. For one, Jesus is always with us, and that's the most important thing. But for two, the Bible tells us that you don't face anything that somebody else hasn't already faced, that somebody else hasn't went through. And so we're not alone. But Jesus says, it's me. Don't be afraid. Oh, but then we got our good friend Peter. We know Peter. He has to have proof. Peter wants Jesus to prove that it's him. And verse 28, Lord, if it's you, Peter replied, tell me to come to you on the water. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're not Jesus and you're sarcastic, this is a great chance to play a joke on somebody, isn't it? It's me, step on out. But Peter had to have proof. And Jesus says, come. Now, what was the only way that Peter could get to Jesus? What was the first thing he had to do? Get out of the boat. Friends, sometimes that's where we fail. We make some big plans. We got some great ideas. We might even make goals, but we fail to get out of the boat. Because that's a very, very hard step to make. I mean, it took many years. My first airplane flight was in 1996. I was 33 years old. And it took a long time for me to work up the courage to do that. And that trip, the first one, was from Atlanta, Georgia, to New York City to catch a plane to Athens, Greece. So I had to learn how to like it quick. And now I really like it. I'd fly anywhere. It's great. I mean, it's nice to be able to get on an airplane in Ontario or Los Angeles or wherever and end up in Columbus in 4.5 hours. Instead of driving, it takes 3 days. But when it comes to parachuting, why would I jump out of a perfectly good plane? I'm not going to do that. But if you want to parachute and you want to skydive, you have to get out of the plane. See, if we want to walk on water, we got to get out of the boat. Peter says, Lord, prove it to me. Jesus says, come. Come. So Peter gets out of the boat, and then he loses his faith, and he begins to sink. Friends, I think we can identify with this too. I mean, in many things in life, maybe we've got out of the boat and we've started going, but not everything's going the way we think it should go. Not everything's happening smoothly. Matthew records Peter say, but when he saw the wind, he was afraid and began to sink and cried out, Lord, save me. Sometimes we do begin to sink. Sometimes we struggle with the things that we're doing. Sometimes we get discouraged. Why? Because we quit focusing on Jesus and we focus on what's going on around us. I mean, it's just like many activities we might plan within the church. We have a focus. We have a goal of encouraging people and most of all, glorifying God through the things that we do. And 3 people show up. What do we look at? Do we look at, well, we encouraged 3 people and we glorified God for those 3 people, or do we look at the hundreds that didn't come? And we consider it a failure. We start focusing on what's going on around us instead of the goal, and we begin to sink. Well, I'm not going to do that again. That was useless. That wasted time. It didn't. Not at all. We can't allow our vision to come off of Jesus. We can't take our focus off of Him like Peter did. We can't allow the things that are going on around us to distract us. I mean, you look at the world today, there are a lot of things in the world that distract us, isn't there? We can't allow that to happen. We got to keep our focus on Jesus, and then we'll keep going forward. Peter allowed fear to get the best of him after he showed so much faith in getting out of the boat. I mean, Jesus, if it is you, tell me to come to you. I mean, he had so much faith. He knew that Jesus could make him walk on water. He knew that. But then when he got out there and saw all that was going on, he said, well, maybe this wasn't such a great idea. Look at the waves. Look at the thunder, the lightning. This is scary. Then he's, Jesus, save me. So at least he did that right. Jesus, save me. We have to call out to him a lot. You see, Peter forgot who was in control of it for a moment. And he forgot what his goal was. What was his goal? He said, Jesus, tell me to come to you. His goal was to get to Jesus. And he forgot. He was distracted. God told the Israelites to get out of the boat. Remember the Israelites, good people, Jacob's family, in Egypt, growing like crazy until a Pharaoh came along that didn't particularly care for the Israelites, didn't remember all that Joseph had done for Egypt in years past. And so he's watching the Israelites multiply, and his concern is, you know, these Israelites are down here in the best part of our country. They're growing by leaps and bounds. What's going to happen if they decide they want to take over our country? They can just hook up with one of our enemies and they'll run us over. So, how do you remedy that problem? No, I'm thinking, let's be friends. He's thinking, no, let's make them slaves. That's what we'll do. We'll coerce them into doing all of our dirty work. Now, they cried out. God hears them, and God's going to save them. God calls Moses. Moses goes in. They do their little dealings with Pharaoh, and eventually Pharaoh says, okay, you can go. So the Israelites venture off. Pharaoh changes his mind. You know what? It was a lot nicer when we had slaves. It was a lot nicer when everybody else was doing this work and not us. And so he sent his army after them. And the Israelites come to the Red Sea. They're not very far out of Egypt. When they start complaining, they come to the Red Sea and they think, whoa, we're stuck. We can't go forward. And we can't go backwards because Pharaoh's army's behind us. Moses, why did you bring us out here to die? Why did you bring us out here? But were there not enough graves in Egypt? I mean, when the going got tough, the Israelites forgot they were miserable in Egypt. In Exodus chapter 3 and verse 7, God told Moses, I have heard their cries. I've heard their despair. I've seen their misery. And now they're saying, oh, we wish we could be back in Egypt. We had it made there. Did you? Really? Yeah, because now there's a little bit of adversity. You know, God himself is protecting Egypt, or Israel, out of Egypt and from Egypt. I mean, as they're traveling along, God is in their presence. A pillar of smoke would guide them during the day. A pillar of fire during the night. But God even had a wall of dust or whatever behind Israel so Egypt couldn't get to them. He was protecting them. And now here they are whining to Moses that they're going to die. That they are going to die right there on the spot. And Moses, like many leaders, just throwing his hands in the air. What can I do? I'm doing what God told me to do. Why do you people whine and complain? What's wrong? But God needed to remind the Israelites that they had to move. Exodus chapter 14 and verse 15, the Lord said to Moses, "Why are you crying out to me? Tell the Israelites to move on." Friends, prayer is important. Crying out to God can give us comfort, can give us strength, and can give us courage. But there is a time that we have to stop and move. That we have to act. I mean, hear God. That's what He's telling Israel. Yeah, you've cried out to me, but why are you still? I've heard your petition. I promised you I'm going to do this. Go. And He had to tell the same thing to Joshua. Remember when Joshua went and they conquered Jericho and they went to Ai and they said, "Oh, this is just a little town. We don't even need to send half our army up there." And they were routed. And Joshua, "Oh God, why did you do this? Why is this happening to us?" People are going to hear this and they're going to say, "You couldn't protect your people." And finally God said, "Joshua, shut up and listen. Somebody sinned and you've got to deal with it. You've got to go and take care of this problem. Get the sin out of the camp and then go on. But you have to move." And that's what God's telling Israel right here. God continued to lead His people. And Moses interceded for them many times. God would come to Moses and say, "I've had it with these people. I'm going to just wipe them out." And Moses would say, "God, you don't want to do that." People will hear about that. "But I want to wipe these people out and make you a great nation." Moses said, "No, that's not the plan." And he'd remind God. I mean, Israel knew where they were headed. They're going to the promised land. Now, if they'd had the faith they needed, when they arrived, they would have been able to enter the promised land. Now, I've never really sat down and figured this out exactly, but the distance they traveled from Egypt to Canaan, they probably could have made maybe in 30 days, and that might even be stretching it. And how long did it take them? 40 years. Why? Well, because they kept being disobedient. They kept having to stop. They kept having to turn. And then they get there. And what happens? None of you people made this trip except for Joshua and Caleb get to go in. Not even Moses got to enter. Because of his disobedience at one point. See, when we learn from the mistakes of Israel and other people in the past, we cannot make the same mistakes. We see they failed to have faith many times. And we saw how God dealt with it. And we saw how they got to where they were going. That God kept His promise even though they were unfaithful. We can learn from that. So why reinvent the wheel, as they say? Why allow our faith to lack? Because we know God is going to keep His promises. We've seen it time and time and time again. So we have to have the faith in order to accomplish it. God has given us the goal. He's given us the path to get there. And we just have to learn to trust Him. 2 Corinthians 5:7, for we walk by faith, not by sight. God, I see the goal. I know where you want me to go. How am I going to get there? Trust me. Trust me. Just trust me. Abraham did when God called him. Where are we going, Lord? I'll show you when we get there. Okay, we'll go. And he did. That's the faith we got to have. Jesus told Paul to get out of the boat. I mean, we know Paul, great guy, zealous for the Lord. Paul's on his way to Damascus to persecute Christians when Jesus calls him. When Jesus gets his attention in a strong way. Acts chapter 9 and verse 6, Jesus says to Paul, now get up, go into the city, and you'll be told what you must do. Now I want you to imagine Saul at this point. I mean, I don't want to say he's an arrogant guy, but he knows where he came from. He knows that as a Jew, he was educated at the feet of Gamaliel, one of the most highly decorated rabbis in the Jewish religion, one of only 2 men to have the title of Rabboni, which means greatest, highest teacher, loosely. And he knows he was on fire for God, and he knew whatever he was doing was right. And all of a sudden on the road, this bright light knocks him down. And he's helpless because he can't see. And he hears the voice. Saul, why are you persecuting me? And so there's the conversation. So finally, Jesus just says to him, you go into the city, and you'll be told what you must do. Get out of the boat. Get up and move. The Lord had to tell Ananias in Damascus to get out of the boat as well. I mean, here's Saul. Everybody knew he had letters from the Pharisees and the high priest to persecute Christians, to put them in jail and even execute them if it came to it. Now he's being sent into Damascus, and God comes to a disciple, Ananias, and he tells him, Ananias, there's a man named Saul I want you to go see. We know how Ananias reacted. I'm not going to go see that guy. You know who that guy is, God. You know that he don't like your people. He's been persecuting them. He's been killing them. I'm not going to go see him. I'm afraid of him. Acts chapter 9, verse 15, it says, but the Lord said to Ananias, go, this man is my chosen instrument to carry my name before the Gentiles and their kings and before the people of Israel. He says, get out of the boat. I mean, it's like when we're talking to our children and we tell them to do something and say, but I'll get hurt or we'll do that. Are we really going to tell you to do something where we think you're going to get hurt? Sometimes we may want to, but no, we won't. We want you to learn, right? But no, God said, I'm with you. This is all the plan. And he goes on to tell him, said, look, this man's in prayer and he's already seen in a vision that a man named Ananias is coming to him. It's almost like God was saying, look, he's going to welcome you with open arms. I've already discussed this with him, and he knows what it's all about. And so Ananias goes. I mean, really, what was Ananias afraid of? A reputation. What he had heard. Do we ever form judgments about people about what we hear? Everybody go, yes, we do. Yes, we do. I mean, I don't know how many football fans we have in here, but Thursday night's game, a man by the name of Myles Garrett took a helmet and hit the Pittsburgh Steelers quarterback right in the head with it. Everybody, oh, he's a thug. He's a poet. He writes poetry. People say he's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Mason Rudolph don't think so. And a lot of other people. But based on what they saw there, now he's got this reputation. Because he reacted to a situation. And sometimes that's what we base our opinions on. That's kind of what Ananias was basing his opinion on. I know what Saul's been doing. But God says, look, he's going to be my chosen instrument. He will. See, God was straightforward with Ananias and told him his plan and said, get out of the boat. Go. See, God will move us out of our comfort zones if we allow him. He will call us. If we trust him and we will be obedient, we're going to see spiritual growth like we've never imagined. We're going to see amazing things happen in our life. Because God tells us probably every day, get out of the boat. Because every day, I'll guarantee you, we have a chance to serve. A chance to touch somebody's life that we don't take. God's telling us, get out of the boat. Because we got to walk by faith. You know, the hope of things not seen. You may not be able to see the results of whatever it is that you have the opportunity to do. You don't have to. You just have to know God is there with you. And it's pleasing to him. It's pleasing to him. So if we place our faith in the way that God leads us, we'll never be on the wrong path. I mean, God set the path out, and as long as we stay on it, we'll never be on the wrong path. Ever. Did you ever think about that? Now, we may not always know what lies ahead. We may not always know what roadblocks may come in that Satan may try to throw. But friends, we know where we're going, and we know we're going to get there. And that's all we have to worry about. Keeping our faith in the promise of God. So I want to ask you right now, what is God calling you to do today? I'm sure that he is speaking each one of us in some way. I'm sure that he's got a plan for each one of us. And today, he's probably telling each one of us, get out of the boat. Get out of the boat. Are you willing? Are you ready to get out of the boat? That's where we're at.